Welcome to Healing Generations, a podcast creating a dialogue uplifting the importance of healing, strengthening, and supporting our communities, and that addresses the disparities and inequities in communities of color. Healing Generations is brought to you by the Healing Generations Institute, a collaborative initiative of the National Compadres Network and the Brotherhood of Elders. Be sure to subscribe to stay up to date on our new releases.
Welcome to Healing Generations podcast. And this is provided by the National Compadres Network. But we are so fortunate as the National Comadres Network to host a once-a-month podcast dedicated and targeted to women, those that identify as females. And so we are just so blessed to be able to join you today. And wherever it is that you find yourself across this beautiful Mother Earth, you know, whether it's in Asian continents or if it's in European continents or over in Africa or the Americas, wherever you find yourself today, we just want to welcome you. And thank you for joining us. This is Debra Luis Camarillo, the proud daughter of Esteban Leos Camarillo and Anita Figueroa. And I'm actually coming to you from a lonely territory, which they now call the Bay Area, the San Francisco Bay Area. It was a beautiful day today, and I'm excited to be here. We had some sun, beautiful breeze, and so it was a beautiful day for me because I just love Papa Sol. So I was really, really excited and enjoying the day today as I was walking through it. And comadre, how are you doing down there, down south? How's it? The weather? How you doing? What's going on?
I'm doing good, comadre, and I'm glad we're finally in sync. Usually, I'm in the sunshine and you're in the clouds, or I'm in the clouds and you're in the sun. So this is a good sign. We're finally congruent here. It's a beautiful day here in Los Angeles, California. Really closer to East LA. Born in East LA. I'm proud of that. But it's a good day, and I know there's a lot of fires going on. We acknowledged that earlier, but right now I'm just really giving thanks for the water. Just this nice fresh water. I know not everybody's blessed to have that. To be able to fill their bodies with that and replenish themselves, healing water, or even to be near the water, near the ocean, near the rivers and the lakes, the waterfalls. And I know we need water so badly. So I'm just giving thanks to Creator and ancestors and for that very sacred element for our existence, and just praying for our water, not only in the world, but also internally within ourselves as mujeres, the element of the water, that we can continue to do this healing work so that our water can continue flowing and continue healing and just blessing water to everyone that Creator puts in our path. Primero Dios.
Yes, because we definitely don't want that water to get stagnant.
Not at all.
Stagnant water stinks. And we don't want to be stinky mujeres walking around. Right? We want to be able to bless those that we come by and that it smells like beautiful perfume, so agua Florida or something, and we come by and we can kind of influence in a good way, right? Yeah. Well, it's such a blessing, and we've had the honor to speak to many people, and sometimes, we have had our conversations, comadre, and we go, how in the world did we get here? Right?
Right.
It's like, you think I'm here now in the third phase of life, and I think about when I was young, and I was like, gosh, the statistics would have said I wouldn't have made it this far, but Creator and the ancestors have other plans. And sometimes, we just don't know where that path is going to take us. And so we have a beautiful mujer with us today that has had a wonderful journey that I'm so excited to share with our audience today. And I know that the words that are going to be shared is going to touch those little hidden parts of our souls and our minds and bring healing. And I know that there'll be inspiration that happens, healing that'll happen, encouragement that will happen as we go through our conversation today. And so without no further ado, comadre, let's bring on our guest for today.
Yes, it's been waiting a long time. So excited. She is our comadre, Doctora Esmeralda Zamudio. She is a first-generation queer Latina daughter of immigrant parents from Guadalajara, Jalisco, Mexico. She was born and raised in San Francisco in the Mission District and is the oldest of her 3 siblings. Currently, Doctora Zamudio is an assistant professor at Mount St. Mary's University in Los Angeles, California, assisting in the doctorate clinical psychology program, specializing in undocumented Latinx immigrant mental health. But most of all, Esmeralda loves being a teacher, a maestra, a mentor to her students, and a mama to her furry baby, Daisy. Con mucho respeto, Doctora Zamudio. Comadre Esmeralda, bienvenidos, welcome. I'd like to pass the palabra to you and ask you to be willing to share a little bit about yourself, your familia, your background, maybe the work that you're doing at this time, those that you're connected to, or just as we continue our comadreando together, whatever comes out of your corazón.
Thank you first so much for having me here and being invited. It's quite an honor to be asked to be a part of this podcast. And, I just you mentioned, I grew up in the Mission District, San Francisco, a predominantly Spanish speaking immigrant neighborhood. And it's a neighborhood and that's very special to my heart because my parents, Marta Cecilia de Los Angeles Reyes, and my father, Eduardo Robles Zamudio, they started life in San Francisco. It was a sanctuary city before California became a sanctuary city. And I'm just so grateful because that's where I learned about comunidad, community. And we got, as kids, we got free vaccinations. We got food from the local church. I went to a bilingual, at that time it was called a bilingual school. Now it's called a Spanish immersion. But that elementary school is special because we got to participate in Carnaval. We got to learn about cultura. We got to celebrate that as well. And I got, to speak Spanish and English. I got to be bicultural, bilingual me, little Esme me. And so, so that's a little bit of it about where I grew up and how I kind of envision mi comunidad. And it's interesting that both Maestra Debra and Maestra Susie, you're both situated in exactly places where I've been growing up and live. So that's pretty cool. Yeah, and so right now, I moved from the San Francisco Bay Area to Southern California because there's this new doctorate program being developed and there's an opportunity to influence the next generation of psychologists, and who were especially, first generation Latinas, Latinx folks. And I was like, oh, this is a job. I'm starting my 3rd academic year. And so I've been so happy and proud to have been a part of these students' journeys and just be someone who can give a consejo or could just be supportive or just, reflect back that awesomeness and that magic and that magia that they have, and especially identifying, as first gen myself. So that's part of the work I'm doing there, and coordinating Latinx emphasis, making events like Bienvenida. There's a welcoming event we have in the fall that I started where we welcome families in comunidad to higher education, right? And so these are things I get really excited about and talking about, but I can go on and on, but yeah, I just wanted to kind of set the context in that way.
Beautiful. A teacher, a professor, is traditionally is such a position of honor culturally where we come from, and especially communities of color, right? A teacher, it was a person that was very revered. And I think that there has been struggles, especially here in the United States, the diminishing of the honor of what that position holds. And I know we hear a lot about the struggles of teachers, but we don't come from a place like that because communities of colors, indigenous communities really hold high regard for teachers, a lot of respect. And when I think about teachers, I think about this beautiful opportunity to provoke minds, to influence in a good way and not necessarily try to condition or to direct the thinking process of the students. But I think of a teacher as that inspirational energy and force to be able to activate that in the students that come across their path. And so in this position, and you're in a very interesting, subject, which is psychology. And so thinking about psychology and thinking about the role, el lugar de un maestro, right? Putting those two together, how do you live that? And how do you connect that culturally within yourself? And how does it then influence the way you go about being this professor?
Oh, that's a great question. Growing up, I didn't see myself being a maestra, being a teacher. Like, it was the furthest thing from my mind. In elementary school, I loved my teachers. They're the best. Like, I just wanted to make sure my penmanship was correct, and I raised my hands because I wanted to be acknowledged. Their validation was everything to me. And I found that school became that safe haven for me as a kid, when maybe times were tough at home, that I can go to class and, mi maestra can say like, oh, you get a little gold star, or we can go out for ice cream. And there were powerful influencers in that, as in my childhood. But as I got older, I went to, traditional, schools, middle schools, high schools. I just never saw myself that way, as being like influencing folks or thinking that I had something to share was the furthest thing from my mind. And somehow I got on this journey to psychology from a professor that in my senior year of high school, I took an elective class in psychology. And mind you, in la cultura, like, yes, teachers are revered, but feelings are not so much the case, right? We don't necessarily talk about emociones and feelings and things that are messy and complicated and complex and deep and profound, or that we don't always have the verbiage or the practice or just the vulnerability to be able to do so. And so that senior year in high school, for my elective, there's a teacher who taught psychology, and that was a major turning point for me. All of a sudden, I learned about this world where it was valid to talk about emotions, and there's actually a science behind it. And because of that class I majored in psychology in undergrad. That changed everything for me. And I was also able to minor in raza studies. I got to study these two concepts individually. I had yet not combined them. I had not yet understood them or integrated them as I feel like I do now. And it was in undergrad where I learned about liberation psychology. And it was a time where I was going through a really like dark night of the soul, if you will, in terms of me finding my identities, like, who am I? Cultura was the first time we talked about cultura was in undergrad for me. Like, I've never talked about it, studied it, learned about it before. So it was opening up this whole new world. And I was learning psychology from a Western perspective. And so I had the school to structure that intellectual mindset around cultura and psychology. And that was really good, but I didn't know how to put it into practice. And in undergrad, some tough things happened. Parents got divorced. There was a breakup in one of my romantic relationships. I was learning about my sexuality, right? And what that was, how to talk about it, and being okay, having, preferences for women. And I feel like I did a lot of growing up at that time. And so what I ended up doing was, I would go out and party a lot. I ended up being in these really negative coping spaces. Like I was drinking a lot. I just had completely lost myself. And somehow I completed undergrad, and I knew that I was lost, and I did the best thing I knew how to do, and I went back to school. I went to graduate school. Like, who does that? Right? I don't. But it was, it was always a place where I knew how to do this. I knew I had a place in school. And so, again, I learned psychology through a very Western lens. But what I ended up doing was also going into therapy, very reluctantly. I know. Folks might be thinking, but Esme, you studied psychology. I did, but I didn't understand how to talk about feelings from el corazón, from the heart. And I didn't know how to process emotion, how to put words to what I was feeling, to even acknowledge that I had to talk about my feelings. In my mind, it was the worst possible thing. Like I was pushing my feelings back. I was like, no, it's, I could do other things that'll help me get through this time. But as my therapist pointed out, I really did need therapy. I really did need to talk to somebody. And all of a sudden, my heart lightened up, and so did my spirit. And, my therapist, being the wise woman that she is, referred me to a spiritual healer. The spiritual healer eventually became my spirit mom over the course of many years. But that was the first time I was sort of like struggling with this concept of psychology and cultura. And funny enough, in my graduate program, one of the practicum sites that I was able to practice, doing therapy at was Instituto Familiar de la Raza. And that's where I learned that there was a way to integrate these indigenous ways of healing and cultura and psychology. My mind was blown, and for the first time, I heard words from the training director, and I was able to like hear and feel what the psychic experience was like for the first time. Like I was able to connect mind and heart and body, and I've never heard of like psychology being spoken about in this way. And so one of the teachers there, the maestras, the elders, the trainers, was Concha Salcedo. Also had her PhD, but she invited us to go to a temazcal, and I went out of curiosity. Pero sometimes there's just things in callings, like when something's being offered, you just feel that's right for you. And so I did that, and so that's why it just opened up a different world for me. It was a beautiful spiritual cleanse, and Instituto is really the place where I started to integrate that indigenous knowledge and psychology.
Beautiful. Wow, what a gift. What a gift. And I'm sure it was at the perfect time as well when you needed that. Like Maestra always says, that the teacher appears. when we're ready, the teacher appears. I imagine it's as you talk, it's been sort of difficult for you to try and balance yourself as you're walking in two worlds. You just talked about having the beautiful opportunity to be able to learn about our traditional medicinal healing ways, and have been so fortunate to learn from a lot of very well-known maestras and maestros, and being able to have the opportunity to learn with a lot of well-known maestras and maestros on your journey for your own healing. I'm wondering if maybe you can share with us a little bit about what has inspired you to learn more about our traditional healing ways, and have you been able to cultivate these traditional ways into the work that you're doing now in the world that you're walking in there? Because you are such pure corazón. Anyway, I'm feeling like you really do want to find a way to cultivate these teachings and be able to teach these healing ways to your students and just pay it forward, helping them to learn how to heal themselves as well. I don't know if you've been able to do that or how that's done. I can't imagine.
Yeah. So, one of the things that Instituto taught me was back in the days, back with the Mayans and the Aztecs, and there is these people called the Tlamatinis. And these Tlamatinis were these wise people that reminded others of who they are. And they saw them, they heard them, and they just reflected back to them, that they're part of this universe. Their creator made them in the special way that they were made. And that's what I started to bring into therapy for me to start to embody this idea of the Tlamatini, because I was reading a lot of books and like The Massacre of the Dreamers, Les Mi Ultima, The Hummingbird's Daughter, and there's just so much wisdom in these stories and in the way people share their own stories. And I started to study also like pyramids and learn from maestros like Maestro Laurencio, my maestra like Rakamira Popovich, who interestingly came from Chinese traditional medicine. And in my sort of induction into this role, I have now like my maestra from the Chinese traditional medicina, and Margarita, who came from a curanderismo like type of background. And they did like this initiation for me. And I thought it was very interesting, but it was also very significant in that, the wisdom comes from very many branches of the tree. And we come to this understanding that, we're these spiritual beings having this human experience. And this is something that I feel like sometimes we forget in our cultura. And so I want to bring it into graduate school. Why not? I remember my experience in graduate school kind of took away my cultura, like who I was. And I had to like be indoctrinated into this Western type of psychology. And yes, there was value in it and getting that degree because it brought credibility to my word in different spaces. And so now I'm like, I don't want folks to forget who they are in this graduate journey. I want them to remember and that they have their own healings. They're Tlamatinis in training too, And so being the coordinator of the Latinx mental health emphasis, students get to take courses in like immigration psychology, bilingual issues in psychology. But what I want to bring is a course in spirituality, in this indigenous traditional spiritual like healing from the cultura, because it's a part of who they are. And it's a part of who the people they will serve. It will be a tremendous disservice if I didn't teach them these ways, right? They might as well not have been taught at all if this was an element that they didn't get exposed to. It'll be a little vulnerable experience for me because that means I have to share a little bit more of myself. And I think, being in a place where I do have this title of maestra, but embodying that as well, I think that maestra like role, I think will inspire others, I think, to also like be who they are. As an example, like this is a brand new program. So for the first time, we have a cohort of students going off into internship, and 7 out of the 8 students are Latinas, first gen. And they always talked about this movie named Encanto. I don't know if y'all have seen it, heard of it. But in this movie, there is this special candle that is like holds the miracle of the family. And the students always used to talk about this movie, and they always wanted to, instead of class, they wanted to watch this movie. I couldn't blame them. They almost got away with it one time, but no. And so on the last day of class, before they went off to internship, I created for them these Encanto velas, and it had like the image of the butterfly on the candle. And I picked the color of the candle for each one. And I made a little note for them. And that was for each individual person. And they started to cry. All I said was like, in those notes was like, just reminding them of the miracle that they are. Yeah. And how what they offer is going to heal a lot of people. They all like started to cry because you can tell like they were being seen. And that's one example. Another example is like I had just gotten back from Oaxaca. I had studied with Master Laurencio out there in Oaxaca, and I came back and I was in a good place. Like I was zen. Like I was so feeling good. And for class one day, I took them out of the classroom. I brought them to a lawn area, and I burned copal. And I shared with them, that sometimes we need to heal like our inner child, because our inner child also needs attention. Mind you, I brought this up as a way of learning about psychodynamic theory. Psychodynamic theory revolves a lot around how you grew up. And so I'm talking about Freud. And here I am burning this copal and talking about their inner child. And I had them, just reflect for themselves and seeing like where those needs are and where they want to go, or what they want to do, what words they need to hear, and so they can say it to themselves and give that to themselves. And I also had them like observe their environment. What were they seeing? What plants, what trees, what animals were they observing? And down here in LA, there's a lot of palmeras, there's a lot of palm trees. And so I brought their attention to a palm tree, and I told them, these palm trees survived the most, dangerous of winds, the strongest hurricanes, and they flex and they bend, but they don't break. And so whenever you're having a hard day, just look to these palm trees and remember their strength and bring that to yourself, and that you will also get through this time and you will survive, and it won't be forever. And so I was giving them coping tools for that they could take with them, just being on campus. And these like coping tools and things that we do are things we trained for as therapists. But the integration of cultura and nature and these traditional ways is different, and it's valuable and it's beautiful. Mm-hmm. And it's not typical in a graduate program.
Mm-hmm. Mm. You talk about tough times. I know you have been through tough times. And I want you to listen to this and then share what you would like to share after you hear this. And it's a proverb, and it says this: the tragedy of life is not death, but what we let die inside of us as we live.
Sometimes on our way to developing our true selves, there's parts of us that have to die. I had an experience where, shortly moving out here to Los Angeles, to Long Beach, I had met the love of my life. Her name was Alejandra Quiñones. She went by Alex for short. She taught me a greatest lesson, a lesson that I had no idea that I was about to embark on, and a lesson I thought I was well prepared for, because I'm like, here, look, I have a degree, I have these trainings, I have accumulated all this knowledge. But the lesson that I was not prepared for to learn about was the lesson of love. Not love like you see in, romantic comedy films or in the movies, and not the kind of conditional love, but this kind of unconditional love that was pure and embodying the soul of love. Like, it was this divine embodied love that I had never felt so much in my life. I've never experienced anything as so beautiful. Of course, I've loved before. I've had partners, romantic partners, and I have family that I love, friends that I love, people that I love. But you can tell that there was something really different about this connection with Alex. She loved animals. She rescued dogs. She rehomed animals that people didn't want anymore. As a result, she ended up having, dogs and birds and lizards and snakes and, all kinds of animals in her home. And she loved and cared for them each individually. And you can tell these animals were loved, because when they would see her, if a lizard could wag its tail, it would have been wagging its tail. And my dog even, I think at one point traded me for her. I was a little jealous. I was like, gosh, Daisy. And she was also an orchid specialist. one of the first conversations we had, she said, I'm an orchid judge. And I thought it was blasphemous. I gasped and I'm like, how can you judge orchids? They're so beautiful. And with this big laughter, she says, no, they're not. And she learned how to grow orchids from spending time with family in Michoacan, Mexico. She came from this lineage of indigenous folks who were not conquered by the conquista, who still had their last names of Sin, Tzin, which I learned means hummingbird. And she learned how to grow orchids in the desert. Yeah, that's where she grew up, Indio, California, or Palm Springs area. And I was just in awe of her. The love that she radiated was palpable. And I remember our first date. She was late. And so I'm like, of course, she's Latina. Of course, we're late. But I forgave her because she came with a colorful bouquet of flowers that she had handpicked from her mentor's garden, prize-winning garden. So I'm like, all right, I'm not mad at that. She was wearing like her high top Converse with like Hello Kitty on them. And you can tell like she spent a lot of time getting ready. Obviously, she looked really beautiful. First thing that she did when she came into my place, she checked the soil in my plants to see if they had enough water. And then she like gave my dog Daisy a pat down, like a palpitation, like to see if she had any tumors that were concerning. So I'm like, who is this person? And she also brought over this orchid magazine, and she just started telling me about orchids. And she just nerded out. My soul knew already who she was, because minutes within meeting her, I already wanted to kiss her. I could feel my soul, like spirit, just wanting to lean in. And my mind was like, Esme, don't be so thirsty. Like, don't be so desperate. Like, you gotta build up the tension, It's like, slow down a little bit. But my mind needed some time to catch up and understand to what my soul already knew. That was our first date. At the end of our first date, we went to walk my dog and we held hands. And this magical thing happened where every cell in my body just started to wake up. It's like it knew, it recognized her. And, I even had like the little hairs on my like arm, like come up, and I had that, ¿cómo se dice? Like that, the bumps, those goosebumps that come up. I knew she was the one. When people talk about somebody being the one, man, I didn't believe it until then. I went to sleep that night very, very happy and just very on cloud nine, because for the longest time, I had been looking for her. I'd been writing about her. I'd been looking for her. And I finally had found her. And the next day, we talk, and she says she wants to meet up in person, and she had something to tell me. I learned that day that she had stage 4 breast cancer. It had spread in her body, and there's no cure for it, and it was terminal. That was the first time I started to grieve her, because regardless of this illness that she had, it was very clear to me that this was the person I wanted to be with. And so it was. A week later, I asked her to be my girlfriend. 2 months later, I asked her to marry me. And all of a sudden, we were on this like really fast, timeline. And it wasn't so much so because she had cancer and I didn't know how long she was gonna like live, but it was more so because it felt right. And it was what my corazón wanted and was asking for. And I was talking to my mentor, my spirit mommy, like, I'm having these feelings, these thoughts, and it's moving pretty fast. I don't want to mess up. I messed this up. And she's like, Esme, like, this is happening in the right time. So go with it. And so I did. Months later, after being engaged, we talked about, having a family. And I had already been trying to get pregnant, through IUI. And so we decided to try using IVF. Things in her health started to decline, and she wasn't able to recover from that. Before I go towards what will be the end of her life, I do want to share that, this woman, the love of my life, showed me how to love. She broke open my heart. She let me be in my feelings. And she taught me what true love really was. And so I'm very grateful to her for that. And when you love somebody so intensely, and the feelings that are mutual, your own stuff starts to come up. Where you still have these wounds, starts to come up. And it was something that I was like, oh, I thought I healed these things. But, Creator likes to remind us, like, no, todavía te queda un pedacito. There's still this other piece that you need. But, she was a great storyteller. And when she laughed, she snorted. And she loved all kinds of people that I probably would never talk to. She taught me those ways as well. And her diagnosis progressed. She got worse. The ending of the story was very much like you would see in like a movie. She didn't want me to see her wither away, get eaten, by this disease. And she drew some distance because she wanted me to remember her beauty and her essence and the way that she was always meant to shine in the world. And so she passed away in May. It's August. So it's like 3 months ago. So this is still fresh. And, when you care for someone who has like an illness like this, you sometimes forget about yourself. And that's something I did. I thought I would never do, but I did. All of a sudden, my world revolved around her and her well-being and her happiness and spending time with her. Because what a precious gift she gave me. Like, she gave me the gift of her time. Whatever she had left on this earth, she wanted to share it with me. And so I really, honored that, and I held on to that. But upon her passing, I realized I was lost again. And I didn't know who I was again. Thoughts of going back to those negative coping skills back, way back when, crossed my mind. Because why wouldn't they? Right? And I had all kinds of feelings towards Creator, towards life. I had to go through that. I had to go through it through not my mind, but my emotions. And now I had tools. Now I had people. Now I had a therapist. Now I had my teachings from my maestras, from my spiritual healers. And I didn't have to go back to these really destructive ways. So instead of going back to school, I came back to what I knew, how to heal. Through temazcales, through pláticas with you all, in these círculos, these healing circles. Through learning about the spirit world. Through sitting with the teachings that grief had for me. And they're difficult times. And I feel like, yes, a part of me did die. But after that temazcal I had at the retiro, I realized what did die was a part of me that I didn't need anymore. These old stories, these old identities, these old traumas, especially childhood stuff. And I also didn't want to be those things anymore. And I knew, and Alex would remind me of this all the time, that even through the spirit world, she would remind me, Esmeralda, you still have a purpose. You still have something to share. You can't go with me, even though I wanted to very badly. And that I still have a lot more to share. And so I don't take that responsibility lightly. And so I continue to heal, and I continue to share my story from this wound. And I'm learning that when people share their stories, it helps others. I've always heard of that concept, but I never thought a story I would share would help. But yeah, that was Alex. Mi solecito. She was my florecita. I appreciate you all listening to this love story.
Beautiful, beautiful. I appreciate you being so willing to be so vulnerable, but so real, so in your truth. I'm hoping those that are healing, that are struggling with maybe the same kind of similar situation, that because of your willingness to share your story, will bring healing to their hearts, to their souls, so that they can keep going and fulfill their purpose as well. But even more than that, I'm hoping that this is bringing healing to you, Esmeralda, and to your corazón. And we will continue to pray for you, and we're always going to be here for you when you need us. Primero Dios. We're getting toward the end of our time in here. That time goes so fast when we're sharing our medicina, our stories, what makes us who we are, who's helped to make us who we are, and who continues to help us be the best that we can be. There's just never enough time. There'll never be enough time. But before we leave, we always like to ask our comadres. We got another generation coming up here, and they're being faced with many, many challenges. I'm sure you see it every day, teaching your students, facing things that we didn't have to deal with. It's a whole different world, today. So I'd like to ask if you'd be willing to share maybe some advice that you would like to offer, this next generation, or anyone that's listening that may be struggling with a similar situation. Anything, any palabras, any consejos that would be helpful in terms of their own health and healing, and finding that strength and that courage to go forward, finding that strength and courage to face and acknowledge their pain emotionally, and not just mentally, not just understanding the pain, but really allowing themselves to be with it, to know that it's okay to feel, it's okay to acknowledge and help that process along. It's okay to cry. All the things that, Creator, those gifts that Creator gave us for our healing, that it's okay to do that. Maybe you want to share about some consejos on life, on loss, tradition, healing, anything that comes from your corazón, and maybe it's even about eternal love.
Thank you. I was thinking about this piece, and a couple of things came up for me. One piece is, they say time heals all, but you have to put in the work, for it to happen. It doesn't happen spontaneously and just like that. So you have to put in the work, and you have to believe that there is a spirit world that's very much alive. I know Alex still communicates with me through songs, through people, through animals. She's always sending me these messages of I'm still here. And if I may, I'd like to share one of those messages. Somebody, I think it was my mom. My mom was I feel like I need to share this poem with you all. It's in Spanish, but I could translate it into English. So this is called Un colibrí me dijo que te dijera. Quiero decirte que ese dolor que no le cuentas a nadie va a pasar. Que un día volverás a bailar y a reír sin temor a romperte en el proceso. Quiero que sepas que los días malos no duran para siempre, que al final vuelve a salir el sol y tú volverás a florecer. Quiero decirte que la herida cerrada solo se observa donde un día dolió demasiado. Si quieres llorar, hazlo hasta secarte. Y luego ve al mar y llénate de el alma con las olas y los atardeceres. Quiero decirte que siempre habrá amor. Siempre me tendrás en tu alma, y eso es lo más importante. Regálate las flores, de esas rosas que te gustan. Cómprate ese chocolate que tanto te gusta. Cómete ese helado de café. Ponte un vestido corto y el labial rojo. Porque todo pasa y no dolerá para siempre. Date la oportunidad de salir, de sentir que no puedes más y luego sorpréndete al darte cuenta que pudiste con todo. Todo pasa. Esto también pasará, lo prometo. Tú sabes volar, antes volabas por el mundo y yo sé que no has olvidado cómo hacerlo, solo que en este tiempo las alas se te volvieron pesadas. Yo sé que la vida se te ha puesto difícil, pero solo será por un tiempo. Yo estaré siempre presente para darte la fuerza que necesitas. Sí, ahí estoy contigo mientras miras a extraer la miel en nuestro patio. Me lo dijo un colibrí. I can share it in English as well if that would be helpful for folks listening. So this poem is called A Hummingbird Told Me That to Tell You. I want to tell you that that hurt that you have that you don't tell anyone will pass. That one day you'll dance and you will laugh without fear of breaking yourself in the process. I want you to know that the bad days will not last forever. That at the end of the day, the sun still comes out and you will continue to blossom. I want to let you know that that wound will heal and you will only see the scar, reminding you of the hurt that was once there and hurt very much. If you want to cry, cry until you can't anymore. And then go to the ocean and fill your heart with the waves and sunsets. I want to let you know that there is love and you will always have me in your heart. And that's the most important thing. Give yourself those flowers, those roses that you like. Buy that chocolate that you always are eating and you love. Eat that ice cream. Put that short skirt on and put those red lipstick on. Because everything passes and this will not be forever. Give yourself the opportunity to feel until you can't any longer and then surprise yourself when you realize that you could go through this process. Everything happens and everything passes, I promise. You know how to fly. You used to fly through the world and you haven't forgotten how to do it. It's just that right now your wings are a little heavy. I know that life has been difficult and it will only be for a short time. I will always be present to give you strength when you need it. And I'll be there when you see me taking honey from our patio.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Wow. Wow. And you may be out there listening and finding yourself really soaking in this message. I know there's many of us that are in that place experiencing a lot of pain. And I want to emphasize some of the words that Esmeralda said. This time around, she was able to use the tools, able to go through the grief in a healthier way, not a destructive way. And I want us to take that to heart because it's so easy when we forget about ourselves. It's so easy to neglect ourselves, and it's so easy to turn that pain inward upon ourselves. But the beautiful message here today is that in the most difficult times, we still can do it in an honoring way. And so I want to encourage you, if that's you today, take heart. Hold on to these words. Hold on to the beautiful poem you just heard. Find those people that are about you. Go to the places that will support you. Be around love. Be around those that care for you. And as we close today, I just want to thank you. Thank you for joining us again today. And I told you you would not be disappointed because the healing happened today. There was a lot of messages that you can take away from our podcast today. And so I just want to just say that we're very grateful to our guest today, Dr. Esmeralda Zamudio, and her blessing us with her presence. I want to thank you for joining us today because we appreciate your presence. I want to thank the National Compadres Network, Maestro Jerry, whose messages go through all of our work. And I just want to thank all those that are involved to make this happen. Our technician, Emilio. I mean, there's so many hands that take part for us to come across the airwaves. So thank you. Thank you from the bottom of our hearts and for joining us. And as we sign off today, we just wish you the best. Blessings on your healing journey. And we hope to be with you again next month. And so, comadre, with that, we're going to say bendiciones, right?
Bendiciones.
And so you want to sign off? Yeah.
Bendiciones. What a beautiful love letter. I will be taking all of those beautiful words into my heart. And I just feel so grateful that you were given one of the most powerful maestras, your partner, who will continue to guide you and walk with you and teach you even more as time goes on. So thank you. Gracias. Adelante.
Thank you so much for having me and being a part of this healing journey. You know, if it wasn't for, you know, the Compadres Network, for you all, maestras, like, I don't know where I would have found it. So I'm very grateful for you all and the work that you do. So I really am grateful for what you all provide here in this space.
And so that we will wrap this edition up. And thank you and blessings as you go on your healing journey. Bendiciones.
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 For more information about Healing Generations and the Healing Generations Institute, visit nationalcompadresnetwork.org and be sure to subscribe to stay up to date with our new releases.